All right. Yo, what's up, Ken? How you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, yeah. So standard stuff. We'll give it like 5 minutes for people to get in, and you know,
Yeah,
then we'll start
let's
discussing the video. Blah blah blah.
yeah, let's break this shit down.
Yeah. So shout out to my man Surfbone for helping me out with this beautiful background you see with the Goku image and my sexy profile pic. He's a Chad for putting that together for me. And he also made the thumbnail as well. So thanks so much to him. He's a legend. Um so basically today we're going to be responding to ThunderGod's second video that I said we would be when I was doing it with my friend Zek. It's just one of those like tier scaling videos that like similar to what Seth did, that type of thing. So uh his scaling isn't okay, so we'll get to it more in the video, but he has a decent understanding of the scaling, but there are obviously some issues with it. Um Mainly like the Norse stuff and a little bit of stuff with the primordials. Um, but other than that, I don't really think there's much issues with it. What do you think, Ken?
Yes, he pretty much has the scale into a T. It's just that some things he doesn't and interpret them well and commits a lot of mistakes. But I blame that on the people that he's actually getting the arguments from, mainly.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I feel that he obviously isn't getting these arguments on his own because in it, like, throughout this video, he references the novels, but he ignores like other novelization statements as well. It's a little bit weird, but other than that,
yeah.
it's not really that bad. Um, is Noodles online? I'll just ask him. No, he's not. Okay. Streaming with my friend Kenny. We'll go to company 8 at everyone. Streaming with my friend Kenny. Reacting to a God of War tier list video. And we'll post the link. Alright, now we'll wait on to Surfbone. Alright, how many people do we got right now? Let me just get it up on my phone. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about yourself, Kenny.
Oh, about me, I'm just the average God of War power scaler. 6 feet tall,
Yeah.
pretty chatty, pretty good with the ladies, like,
Yeah, yeah.
the average stuff. Yeah,
Mm-hmm,
you know,
mm-hmm.
that's pretty much a standard for God of War power scaler, if you guys don't know. So that's I consider myself a nice guy as well. So yeah,
Nice guy.
I would say, I would say so. Yeah.
That's alright. Alright, so we just
Okay.
got the blue in there right now. We'll wait for a few more people to join up. What's the time where you are, Ken?
Time is 8 p.m.
8 p.m. So it's pretty late.
Yeah.
Okay. So how long have you been scaling God of War for?
How long I've been scaling God of War for? I scaling the series like seriously
Mm,
like 2 years ago or something. I'm fairly new. I'm actually fairly new.
not
I
bad.
got like two, yeah, like 2 years, maybe 2 years and a half or something. Yeah. I first time like looking into God of War stuff to know like how strong Kratos actually was.
Mm.
After watching some of Seth's videos and shit like that, then I started to get really interested. Oh damn, I didn't know he was that strong. And I started
Yeah.
looking up a little bit. And I said like, damn, he really is powerful. Then I started like debating people and that's how I got into all of it pretty much.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. All right. Well, I feel we're probably not going to get that many people since it's probably late, but I just wanted to get this out of the way because my friend Kenny has to go shortly. So we're just gonna do this, get this done, and we're gonna react. Live reaction. All right, so let's. Can you see the screen, Kenny? Am I sharing? Can you see it?
I can. It's perfect.
Can you hear it well?
So,
did you hear that?
before this video starts,
Can you hear that?
Yes, yes, I can hear it.
All right, dope. All right, so let's begin, guys.
I did break this list up into tiers.
Oh, and by the way, at the end of the video, we're gonna give our own little tier list as well. By the way, so yeah, let's get into it.
And the main point of that is that some of these matchups are a little more subjective, and I didn't want to give an objective answer. I can assert that some people would beat some people based on this reasoning. But the main point here is that if you disagree with the placement of a character in one tier and you think that somebody else in the same tier should beat them, that's fair. My main point is being that these tiers are more so like the part that's a little more clear cut. That's my main point. So enjoy the video, guys. What's going on, guys? TG or ThunderGod here, and today I'm going to be ranking the God of War characters slash bosses slash gods. It's a lot of slashes from weakest to strongest because I really like the series and I thought it'd be an interesting video. I'm only really going to be covering characters who are super relevant and actually shown in the series, as a lot of characters are talked about to be insanely powerful, but just not shown. For example, you have Morpheus, a primordial who can place all the gods and force them to sleep when Helios is taken out of the sky. But then we know Helios isn't as strong as some of the other gods, and Morpheus isn't really shown. You understand my point. So I'll include some characters who are, relevant and powerful, but not everybody, like the Barbarian or the Kraken. Because, what am I going to do with that? Who really cares? With that being said, I will also be using information from the God of War 1 and God of War 2 novelization, as long as novelization from the most recent God of War novel. So, in case you see any text pop up on screen, that is where the information comes from. In terms of that, just to be quoted, which is good because the novels actually extrapolate on a lot of the things the games don't necessarily brush up on. So, they'll kind of fill in the gaps for us, in which case I will use that to talk about my answers. So, that being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. I worked really hard on it. Hopefully you enjoy it. It took a lot of work. I already said that. Man, stop rambling. Let's get into the video. Like and subscribe if you're new here. Man, let's go.
All right.
Primordials were the first.
Took like 2 minutes to get into it.
Race of beings and deities that came into existence, predating the.
Okay, so here's the primordials first. We'll listen to his reasoning and then respond as per all of the other tiers.
The gods and even the titans. They were.
I don't know why he has Erebus on here, but whatever.
Astronomical in size, and their appearance were elemental and cosmic in nature, similar to the Titans, though they bore a more humanoid appearance than the Titans. The infighting among the primordial race resulted in the creation of the world and the universe as we know it, as well as birthing several other deities, such as the Furies, the main antagonists of God of War Ascension. The vast majority of the race was killed off during and shortly after the war. After the end of the war, the remaining primordials went on to rule the universe until the Titans overthrew them. We actually do know the primordials themselves are, universal in strength, with the mere body of Uranus being what actually created the universe that God of War actually takes place in. Now, there's no real way to
the way he pronounces it. He says instead of saying Uranus, instead of saying Uranus, he says Uranus. Right? Yeah.
That's funny as hell.
Primordial is stronger than which. Although you could make some assertions. For example, we see Ceto gaining the edge on Uranus in the opening of God of War Ascension. Although this is rather a moot point, as we know Kronos is ultimately the one to defeat Uranus. It should be noted that Kronos is ultimately the one to defeat and overthrow Uranus. We actually do know that is the case from multiple.
Said it was like the opening to Ascension, the Titan War from God of War 2. So we do have numerous statements that they had like a roughly equal battle that lasted a while. It was a full-on cosmic battle. We know that a prime Kronos is relative to his father, with obviously being superior, right? So
yes,
we'll get into why them being this low on the tier list is a bit ridiculous once he finishes in a second.
Multiple sources. The main point here being is that the primordials all seem to be relative to one another, especially when we consider what senior writer of the series, Ariel Lawrence, states that they all had their own set of weaknesses and strengths that could be exploited and used, which would imply there isn't an astronomical gap in between the primordials to the point that one is unable to fight the other per se. So they should be relative enough, or just comparable. So this tier out of all of them is really the most loose in general. So make what assertions you will, it just should be noted that anybody on this like primordial tier should be able to defeat any other on this primordial tier.
So I feel, yeah, you go first, Kenny.
Yeah, like any primordial being able to beat the other, like not necessarily, because we know there was a clear winner in that war. Like somebody had to rule the universe. It wasn't a they didn't like distribute the power evenly amongst them. There was a clear alpha in that pack, right? We know that's Uranus, of course. So it's not to say that any other primordial could beat the other. Uranus would be obviously on top of the rest.
Yeah, and we know Thanatos obviously existed around this time as well, since his realm existed like before time, right? So
yes,
so that means that it would have to have been before Kronos, and if it's before Kronos, it means that Uranus was in power. So it means people like Thanatos were cucking down to Uranus. And it's like we only see I agree with exactly what you're saying, Kenny, and the issue is that with what he's saying is they're very clearly not relative when so with the other three primordials like Chaos, Urea, and Seto, right? It's very clear that with their punches, they're capable of like knocking off body parts and shit, right? Like, Urea is capable of punching Chaos's jaw off with one punch. Chaos is capable of hitting off, Urea's arm, but and then even Uranus just one taps Seto, and she just breaks into 1,000 pieces and just becomes water, right? Yet none of that is shown with Uranus when he's fighting these things. And it's not established that there are teams in the Primordial War either. It's just they're all fighting each other equally, right? To try and become the ruler of the universe. And we obviously don't see Nyx a part of the war. We don't see Thanatos. We don't see Morpheus. We don't see, Erebus. We don't see many. We don't see a lot of the Primordials. We don't even see Gaia, right? So we obviously know they're not, at least in that part of the war, in the Ascension opening, they're not a part of. But if it states that there's a war between all of the Primordials fighting for control over the universe, and Uranus comes out on top, because it's stated that the Primordial War lasted for an eternity, right? Which is like an immeasurable amount of time. Yeah.
Yes.
So if you're saying that these four Primordials were the only ones to fight for an eternity, then, sure, you can say that, but, I heavily disagree. I feel like that's a little bit limiting and ridiculous when it's stated that there was a war between all of the Primordials. It's just these four are like the main ones that they showed at the time, right? Because this would take place after Ghost of Sparta as well. So Thanatos would have like a model and whatnot.
Yes, and the way Gaia narrates how the fight between the Primordials went, she just said in a war before the Age of the Titans and the gods of Olympus, the Primordials rage for an eternity, basically. Yeah. So they were just raging out at each other. So I think it is very unlikely that they're taking teams or taking any sides in that war. I think it's an all-out battle, honestly.
Yeah, I feel it's very, very clear that they're all just fighting each other, right? Because we don't know what happens to Urea. All we know is that in the actual cinematic, Uranus and Urea are the only ones left standing at the end of that war, right? Because Chaos has her face torn off. If you think she survived that, well, whatever. And Seto just turned into the ocean. So the only ones known to be standing are Urea and Uranus. And Uranus is the victor, so Uranus probably killed him. And Uranus would also seemingly have all of his body parts, and he wouldn't have been dismembered later on. So Urea would have already been at a disadvantage since he doesn't have a fucking arm. So I feel it's very clear that Uranus is just the strongest of the Primordials, and I feel that he's obviously not necessarily equal to them as well.
So yeah, the only thing we see happening to him is that they blew his hat off. They just blew his hat off. He just got his helmet.
If the distinction is that these Primordials can hit off body parts, but when they're shown to fight Uranus, they only hit off his helmet, right? It's very, very clear that he obviously has better durability than the rest of them, right? So
pretty much.
So yeah. So I feel that Uranus should be up with Kronos later on, but we'll get into that when we get to it. Because Kronos should actually be weaker, since he's been like he's been scavenging around the desert for like an unquantifiable amount of time, and he's carrying like Pandora's box, and he has all these warts on his body, which means his skin has been like corroding and shit.
And he gave part of his powers, or remains of his powers, to Kratos in God of War 2 as well.
Yeah, he has no magic left. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Gaia is an extremely powerful Titan in the God of War series, but in all honesty, aside from just being a powerful Titan, she's relatively featless. Now, don't get me wrong, she's impressive enough to contend with Poseidon's Sea Avatar to a degree, but this is more so...
So Poseidon's Sea Avatar should be stronger than his base form, because he's actually accumulating the strength from the sea as well. So he also has lots of things backing him up.
So
this is like the equivalent, so like when Zeus went big, this is basically Poseidon's equivalent.
Assisting Kratos, who in all honesty was making up the difference here, but she is very powerful nonetheless. Now, aside from being able to combat, you know, Poseidon's Sea Avatar, she also is shown getting dismantled and almost one shot alongside Kratos.
Yeah, the lightning bolt that Hades and Poseidon were terrified of and didn't want to get hit by.
Yeah, by base Zeus as well.
Yeah,
pretty much. And in this,
you go.
And in this specific part, we see that Zeus is not only like creating lightning bolts from his hands only, he's also gathering like some from the sky as well before shooting it to Gaia and Kratos.
He's charging it up. Yeah, he's very evidently charging it up, and he's shooting this at Kratos, who like it should be his strongest version of the bolt we've seen so far, because at this point Zeus is fed up with Kratos. He wants Kratos gone. He wants to deal with Gaia as well as like a background thing, since it's a circumstantial thing, right? He wants to get rid of him, right? So it would make no sense at all for him to throw his weakest lightning bolt, or his, you know, medium-based lightning bolt, or whatever you want to call it, his medium, right? Yeah. That wouldn't make much sense if he's frustrated, he's angry in the moment, and he's also like being consumed with fear to get rid of Kratos as soon as possible so that he doesn't get killed, right?
And his brother just got killed. Who's the strongest?
Yeah, for some reason Zeus just watched his brother getting murdered brutally and didn't interfere. So yeah, he's like mad at that too for some fucking reason. So yeah,
Kratos from Zeus is...
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention as well. We'll see if he mentions it, actually.
Thunderbolt, a weapon that many gods actually do fear, as it is one of the most powerful attacks in the God of War series. But essentially, Gaia embodies the standard Titan arsenal, being very comparable to Titans like Perseus, who could damage gods like Helios greatly. So it also seems that a majority of Titans are relative to one another. I'm not going to go into each individual Titan. I'm just using Gaia as kind of the benchmark for the standard Titan arsenal.
I feel that in this instance, Gaia should be the strongest Titan, since she's leading them all, right? And we know Atlas isn't obviously a part of the team. We know Kronos isn't, and we know that the leader of the Titans is typically the strongest. Like the only instance where that's not the case is when Atlas is very, very slightly stronger than Kronos, right? So typically the main Titan is like the strongest, the leader is the strongest. So I feel Gaia should be the strongest if she's commanding them all. We also
also by feats she should be like, she's more impressive than the rest.
I mean,
in that instance.
Okay, so we obviously can't quantify the difference between how strong Poseidon was during the Great War, and how strong he is now. We just know that current Poseidon is stronger than Great War Poseidon, right? So whether that's a 2 times increase in strength he gained over thousands of years, or a 3 times, we can't definitively state, and anyone who does is an idiot, right? Wink, wink, huh, Edgar? So we can't definitively state how much stronger he is. We just know he's stronger. And we have instances where Atlas is literally brought to his knees. So we know that Hades' soul manipulation is like a tug of war and physical power type thing, right? And Poseidon was required to weaken him to the point where Hades could overpower him. Because we know in the novel, when Atlas did like that punching rock thing where he punched rocks and shit, in the novel, it's explained that those would have fatally injured Hades, right?
Hades.
Yeah. So we know that Atlas and Kronos are probably stronger than the gods in that instance. Well, at least Atlas is, right? And he was like brought to his knees and almost collapsing on the ground when he got hit by a weaker Poseidon's lightning. In this game, however, not is Poseidon almost definitively stronger by how much is irrelevant. He's in his like Titan form, and he's hitting Gaia with these like water horses and his lightning, that the same lightning he used against Atlas, and Gaia is tanking the ever living shit out of it,
Yeah.
right?
And she's holding onto a mountain
She
while
can't even fight
maneuvering to try to
properly.
fight him off.
Yeah.
Yes.
So she's not only at a disadvantage, but she's tanking it. Now, throughout the fight, she did get knocked out, right? But she was still somewhat conscious and, you know, holding onto the mountain. So she was like, that was after he beat Poseidon. But, you know, she should have better durability than Atlas. Because I don't see Atlas. Nothing indicates that Atlas would be capable of tanking that for that amount of time, right? And he was right. Kratos definitely was making up the difference. But even then, Gaia is capable of grabbing Poseidon and like concussing him against the mountain, right? She's she's slow in comparison, but when she does get hits off, they are capable of like concussing this Titan Poseidon, right? And she has better durability, so her being this
So
slow
she
makes
should
no
be
sense.
pretty much, yeah.
Yeah,
Now Hermes is an interesting
I don't know how the fuck you think Hermes
Yeah,
is going to be
yeah.
Gaia, but
character.
This is so retarded. You know?
The god
Yeah.
of war mythos. Being the speedster out of the gods of Olympus, Hermes actually does display some impressive feats for his speed. For example, being able to deliver all the souls to the underworld all at once. Now, to be entirely honest, Hermes isn't weak by any standard, but he does seem to be the rut of the litter in the Olympian hierarchy.
So the interesting thing is that Zeus thought, so with Ares and Athena gone, Zeus thought that Hermes would be the next best option for defense of Olympus, right? So if you want to argue based off of that, he could actually be higher, because then he would be comparable to like who would it be? Like it goes, yeah, he would be like comparable to Helios. He would be next in line after Helios, disregarding Athena and Ares, right? So, you know, he should actually
And
be, you know, probably greater than Artemis and Apollo
yes,
and that type of thing.
because Zeus didn't bring them into the war. He brought Hermes,
Yeah.
which means that he thinks Hermes would be a more valuable like ally in that situation. So
Yeah.
that's
And we can't claim that like people like Artemis, Apollo, and whatnot, that they declined to help him out, right? Because we have no evidence for that. All we know is that he chose, what we definitively know is that he chose Hermes over them, right? So he thinks that Hermes should be capable of defending Olympus against Kratos, right? Whether or not he thinks Hermes will die, that's a completely different point. He just thinks that he is a better option than Artemis or Apollo, for example. Now, obviously, that argument's iffy, but I'm saying if you were to argue that, he could be higher. So, but right now, I don't even think he's above Gaia. So,
He shows great inferiority to characters like Athena, someone who is also
Yeah.
relatively featless. So
she isn't featless.
it's a little harder to use her, but he also displays this in almost every interaction he has with other characters, such as other gods and the Sisters of Fate. To be honest, Hermes just doesn't do much to give him an edge on any of the other gods. On top of showing great inferiority to lower Olympians, he also simply lacks any substantial feats or showings. Not to say his speed isn't a great asset, but we've seen characters slower than him like Kratos. So it's not like his speed is the biggest like component here, as a lot of the other gods are also way more hacksy as well. So his speed's actually unironically the weakest thing on this list, at least on the lower Olympian side. Athena is another one of those gods who doesn't display any radical feats of strength or power. We do know she is confident enough in her strength to actually
The fact that she's capable of even like pushing Kratos back a substantial amount right here is a feat.
threaten Hermes after he tries to take her virginity. Yeah, I'm on the same page with you on that one. But aside from that, we actually don't really have any crazy showings from her. essentially it's implied she's above Hermes, as everybody kind of is. But after that, there's no real way of knowing where she would be. So I can't really place her confidently higher on this list. Her transcending into a new plane of existence and knowledge after she dies is an impressive feat nonetheless. But we can't really use that again, as we're talking in a combat scenario, which that isn't really too relevant.
So we know that she's the goddess of war and goddess of wisdom, so she should just have the same abilities as Ares as well, if not
Yeah.
similar abilities, because even her death explosion is similar to Ares as well, right? So,
And she's supposed to come right after him or right before him in terms of might, right?
yeah.
So she's no slouch. Definitely.
I mean, it's also stated as well, like, Kratos kind of holds them in, like, a similar regard, Ares and Athena, because when he goes back in time to pick up Gaia, he's like, Ares and Athena are dead and I have the blade with me, right? So he kind of thinks that if they were to be alive, they should be considered like an opposing threat at that point, since like
exactly,
he wouldn't have mentioned them, you know, outside of that. Like he's making this statement that he's accomplished something, that their defenses are weaker because Athena and Ares aren't there, right? So
yeah,
you know, he's holding them in a similar regard, that they could be capable of providing like a rough defense in the same category as each other. There's also other things as well, like so something that he brings up later is a bit ridiculous because we do know it's true. So we know that there's a statue room of the mightiest gods in God of War 2, and we know that the Ascension multiplayer is in reference to the mightiest gods. So in Ascension, we have you know, Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, Ares. Then Helios was meant to be the fifth god, and he brings this up later as well. So we know that Helios is considered to be the fifth strongest or mightiest god based off of what the developers wanted to input in the game. And the reason as to why they didn't have Helios, a part of that is because of time restraint, right? So it's not that they changed their minds, that they didn't think he would be the fifth mightiest god. It's that they didn't have enough time to implement him in the game, because there's obviously a fifth column that you can walk up, right? So we can he doesn't think we can see that as canon. I personally think we can, because again, it's not a lore related reason as to why they didn't implement him. It's because they didn't have enough time. But even if we disregard that, we can use that in context with the statue room in God of War 2, where we see Zeus, Hades, Poseidon, Ares, Athena, Helios, and Athena, right? So if we use the context of what we've been given, Athena should be the sixth mightiest god after Helios, if you take into context the Ascension column, right? And then if you want to say that Hermes is the seventh because they didn't include Artemis and Apollo, and Zeus thinks he would provide a better defense, then you can include that as well and just say Hermes is the seventh. But that doesn't really matter. He's like a minor god and a messenger. So that's irrelevant. But Athena should be the sixth mightiest god based off of the statues of the mightiest Olympians in the Sisters of Fate room in God of War 2.
Yeah, and there's pretty much no reason to deny it. Like, it's pretty self-explanatory at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Helios. Now, Helios, the god of the sun, is an extremely powerful character and important to the God of War lore. Now, Helios is actually shown to be pretty impressive, actually being able to drive back the primordial Nyx from the sky every day. We know this to be the case from the God of War Ascension multiplayer.
So the issue is that if Helios is the one banishing her from the night sky to bring about day, and we know that nighttime occurs, we can also state that Nyx would also be overpowering him as well to come about night, right? So they should be equal. So Nyx should be like around this position right here with Helios. So, yeah.
Because simply put, if he has to overpower her every morning to bring the sun, then she has to do the same to bring the night as well, so that the cycle can continue that way. So she would be like relative to him in that sense.
Yeah.
And,
and we obviously know people like Perseus, who should be weaker than Gaia, literally one taps him when he grabs him. And Atlas probably could have one-tapped him as well and crushed him with what he did in Chains of Olympus.
As evidenced here.
On the edge of the Aegean, where the great god Helios banishes Nyx from the night sky, an epic battle rages within the great walled city of Troy.
Now we know Nyx herself actually participated in the war with the other
and cut down to Uranus.
primordials and should be comparable to her father again. So Helios being above this tier shouldn't really be any surprises.
In note as well, if you want to state that Apollo and Artemis get the same power from the same source as Helios, they could potentially be around here as well. And so could Hyperion too, since Hyperion also gains his power from the sun. And the primordial sun. And he actually has created weapons out of it and shit, as shown in Ascension multiplayer and whatnot. So hypothetically, you know, in theory, they could also just be around here as well.
Now, Helios generally should be more impressive than Hermes for the simple fact that, you know, again, Hermes displays great inferiority to a lot of other characters. But there also is the argument of, like, for example, Hermes dodging Helios's light beam in the fight, as he's actually able to do that. But there's nothing to say that
this is my friend Cosmic's little recording right here as well.
Ahead of Helios would really be indicative of his actual full capabilities. For all we know, he could have attacks faster or far more potent than his simple beams of light that don't even really attack, they just blind. So I would make the argument this wouldn't be indicative of Helios at his full strength. A side point to add on to this, in the God of War Ascension multiplayer, there is a scene in which they discuss the mightiest gods of Olympus, and there's actually a missing staircase or missing god, in which case, after looking through the files, it does appear to be Helios, as the individual's holding a shield similar to Helios. So if that was actually the case, Helios would be much higher on this list.
We know this is Helios, yeah.
But because obviously it wasn't implemented into the game fully and not fully implemented into the lore,
yeah, so this is
because
where
of lack of time.
Yeah, so this is where he also doesn't acknowledge the statue room in God of War 2, which is an issue. But you know, I feel like we can use this as context to how strong he should be, because like you just said, and like what I said earlier, it's because they didn't have enough time to implement the statue into the game and the powers. Like, it's very clear that there's a fourth column there, meaning that they wanted to and they intended to, right? And they were going to, but they didn't have enough time to actually get it in. So if you want to say that's not valid, that's fine, but we can still use that in context to where he should be through the statue room and the Sisters of Fate's room, right?
Can't really place him higher on this list for that reason. Atlas. Now, Atlas is another one of those characters who's not only very important to the God of War lore, but arguably one of the strongest titans as well. For starters, we can put Atlas above Hermes based off the fact that he was actually able to drag Helios from the sky in God of War Chains of Olympus, and with his power break the pillar of the world. Helios himself actually references how Kratos saved him from Atlas. But on top of dragging Helios from the sky and capturing him, he actually displays strength comparable to that of Kronos, being able to blow.
Yeah, so in the novel, it's actually explained that Kratos was like shitting himself and felt like his spine like cracking and shit.
Sky and capturing him.
When like Atlas was doing this. This is a weakened Atlas as well. This Atlas right here should be nowhere near comparable to his prime self for any reason.
He actually displays strength comparable to that of Kronos, being able to blow back a younger and weaker Hades while contending in strength with Hades.
Yeah, by the way, this is what I was referencing. In the novel, it stated that these rocks here would have fatally injured Hades. So it's like, you can't even say Atlas is below these prime gods.
In a chain tug of war, just like Kronos actually did. They both perform similar feats essentially.
He's actually struggling a lot to get out Kronos' soul as well.
Yeah, they need to tag team him in order to get his soul out of him, which obviously implies superiority.
Next appearance in Chains of Olympus. Atlas even performs a feat similar to that of Hyperion, the titan that embodied the sun before Helios, in which he holds up the weight of the heaven.
Yeah, here's the lightning feat I was talking about. He's literally brought to his knees after a few seconds.
Or the world, similar to the description of the spear of Hyperion. Atlas doing this for decades with no fatigue. is very impressive, even by general Titan standards.
He's also
So,
charging
we
up
know
his
Atlas
lightning
is actually
too.
an extremely impressive individual, being able to combat the higher tier of Olympians, as well as being remarkable even by Titan standards.
And even then, he's still struggling.
Yeah.
Like he's straining to rip it out, even with Poseidon's help.
Which is kind of why higher tier of
It also
Olympians,
looks
as
like
well as being remarkable
it also looks like Zeus, but whatever.
even by Titan.
It's also further explained in the novel as well that Zeus was like throwing lightning bolts at Kronos' back in order for Hades to rip out his soul. But that's obviously not shown in this cutscene, so if you want to use that or not, it's blah blah blah. You know, it doesn't really matter.
Standards, which is kind of why he's so high on this tier, really. Kronos. Now, we actually know that Kronos was ultimately the one to defeat Uranus in a battle.
We know Kronos is weaker than Atlas. You can't use some director statements and then just not acknowledge others.
On a cosmic scale, we have multiple confirmations that a fight actually took place between Kronos and his father, the primordial Uranus, from which we can confidently say that Kronos would be stronger than his Uranus, simply putting him in the next tier over, being the Titan tier. We know that Kronos brings with him the creation of time itself, making him very powerful, with strength very comparable to Atlas. However, generally in the God of War lore, Kronos is regarded as the strongest Titan.
No, he's
this
not.
can be seen from his leading of the Titans in the Great War, but even more so after Poseidon defeats the Titan Oceanus. Zeus notes the Titan is nothing compared to other Titans, unlike Kronos.
Yeah, so this is in reference after the Great War. During the Great War, when Oceanus actually had his full power, Poseidon struggled with beating him. It was like an even battle. So a prime Oceanus is stronger than like a prime Atlas, which is actually pretty fucking weird. So yeah.
Yeah.
Implying Kronos is somewhat of a top dog with his feats previously discussed supporting this. Kronos is essentially Atlas, but with far more magic involved in play. So taking this into account, he should bare minimum be on the level of Atlas or above based on his feats and lore. You can decide obviously which one you want.
We know he's slightly weaker, and I know you're saying that like it's up to the viewers and whatnot. So, you know, I'm not going to state that you definitively believe this, but Atlas is like slightly stronger than Kronos. And if you want to say Kronos has better hacks, that's fine. We know he has like time-based shit. We know he has weapons and orbs and shit that he used to defeat Uranus. Whatever, you can say that, that's fine. But in reference of like pure strength, Atlas should be above Kronos.
First, this is just my take on it. Atropus and Lachesis.
Fucking hate how he pronounces the names too.
The way he says it, bro, it's so AIDS.
Where's the I? Atropus. You mean Atropos? Like,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Like
by the way, one thing that he doesn't mention, so this is another thing where he's nitpicking novel statements as well. So an issue with this is that when Kratos first fights against Lachesis, he states that, so like she throws like an attack at him, right? And he states that he compares that to Alric's attack, and Alric is like weaker than every single other person that he's mentioned up until this point. So these two, and we know Atropos is obviously stronger than Lachesis, right? Like, Kenny, you know, if you want to explain that in a second, you can. But we know Atropos is stronger than Lachesis. We know Clotho is stronger than the both of them. He doesn't even include Clotho. And we know that these three roughly scale to King Alric's. Like, the Headless Barbarian in God of War 2, they scale to his strength. So,
yes. And with the fat sister, the bigger one, Kratos actually has to use the hammer and has to use way more equipment and trickery to get around her and actually beat her than any of the other sisters, right? And a funny thing, when he hits the fat one with the hammer of Eric, right, he says it does no damage on her, like
yeah,
nothing.
She doesn't even budge.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
none of the others could say the same thing, that
Yeah.
they could like tank an attack like that. So.
Mm-hmm. And I will admit, I thought she was the weakest sister before actually getting to that part in the novel, but it's very clear that she has better durability than both of her sisters. So,
Yeah.
Next, we have the Sisters of Fate.
and we're obviously excluding Fate hacks as well, which he also does. So,
These are probably some of the weirder characters to talk about in this list, since their power is respected greatly by Olympians and Titans, even being the reasons the Titan lost the war. The problem is that their power is so renowned because of the fact that they're able to manipulate the threads of fate for more.
Also, by the way, one thing I didn't mention earlier for Kronos that I was talking with Kenny before we started streaming is the fact that Kratos acknowledges that he was potentially going to die against Kronos during the God of War 3 fight, even with the Blade of Olympus. And, you know, he comes back to Hephaestus and he's like, you sent me to my death? And he's, like, visibly frustrated that Helios tricked him and sent him to fight Kronos and shit. And Kratos blatantly just acknowledges in that moment that he probably could have, like, he could have died. Yeah. And if you accept that this Kronos is weaker than his prime self, while Kratos in God of War 3 had Hades' soul and had the Blade of Olympus while being amped by not only Athena's power, but his own God of War power, then Prime Kronos could actually be far higher.
Absolutely, and this would scale to Uranus as well, because they had a war, so Uranus should be way higher. Like, and the primordials along with Uranus are at the very bottom of this tier list, right? Which doesn't make any sense if they scale to Kronos and shit.
Yeah, because if like Uranus is roughly equal to a Prime Kronos, and God of War 3 Kronos is weaker than Prime, his own Prime incantation, right? Then it's like, it makes absolutely no sense for them to be that low. If Kratos acknowledges he could have died, like, he probably would have died if he didn't have the Blade of Olympus, right? Because that's obviously the reason as to why he won. So, yeah, Kronos should be higher. Atlas should be higher. You know,
Uranus should be higher.
Yeah.
Totally.
It's very weird to not have Uranus near Prime Kronos, in my opinion, or near Kronos at all. I feel that's very weird, especially if it's stated, because Ariel made one statement that the gods are stronger than the Titans and the Titans are stronger than the Primordials because they replaced each other, but there are also other director statements that they're just relative to each other as well.
And the way I interpret those, the director's statement that said that they're relative to each other, is like, it's only talking about the times where they fought in the Great War and shit like that, not in actuality, because we know actually they're like, the Olympians are way stronger at this point.
So. Yeah, in God of War 3, they literally one-tap almost every Titan at the beginning of the game, right? So they're obviously stronger at this point. But, you know, again, we can't quantify how much stronger they are. Because we can't say that it's like a 10 times difference from being equal to one-tapping them. Like, I feel like we can't make a definitive claim, because you could state they're 50 times stronger, you could state they're 10 times stronger, you could state they're only even 2 times stronger, right? We can't definitively state, so.
Mortals, Titans, and gods alike, which is extremely impressive, but isn't fully representative in a combat sense where they would...
Yeah, so it was these magic attacks right here that he's comparing to Alric's power.
Simply fight somebody without, you know, threading their destiny. In which case, we see the sisters actually intimidate Hermes greatly in God of War 2 novelization, going as far to think nothing of him. However, this again is hard to use since it could be in reference to their ability to manipulate fate, in which case they display the showings of contending with a much stronger Kratos towards the end of God of War 2.
He stepped over the bodies and shook off the blood, getting the sandals, blah, blah, blah. Kronos' gift made, he gets amped by Kronos' magic and shit.
We know Kratos has been getting astronomically stronger.
The fact that Kratos has gotten stronger, even with Kronos' magic, yet still struggles with him in God of War 3 is telling of how strong Kronos is. Without magic.
Total monster.
Yeah. Take, for example, the Rage of Kronos ability, which Kratos notes to improve all his stats greatly on top of being an ability he can use. In which case, I make the argument these sisters contending with this much stronger Kratos would earn them a spot.
By the way, as well, ThunderGod, I know you're watching this video because Egard said you guys did, that you guys were discussing it in a voice call for like 3 hours, despite it only being like a 40-minute video. So, like, I know that you're, like, acknowledging that these videos exist, and I know you're a massive fucking rat, Egard, but, you know, just confront me, guys. Like, like, this whole pussy stuff is, like, really, really telling of the type of people you are, if you're willing to, like, talk shit behind people's backs about anything, right? And it's just extremely disingenuous and ratty. It's like, if you do debate me, I will be civil in call, right? But, you know, it just shows respect if you're willing to confront a person on something that they say or something you have an issue with, right? And Edgar always ducks me, and he always ducks my friend Kenny here, or he always comes up with an excuse as to why he can't debate. And by the way, with what Carnifex said as well, who is another liar, right? I've never debated Edgar, ever, in my history of like being on Discord or something. He has never dealt with me. We have never discussed. We've discussed God of War scaling, but we've never ever debated it. And it's funny because a while ago I got Kenny, Kev, and Edgar in a call to discuss like 4D shit and like time stuff. And whenever I brought up God of War scaling, he always agreed. And then I found out later that he was like talking shit in text while in call with us, right, behind our backs. So, like, you know, that's very telling of the type of person he is, right? And I've confronted
like, sure,
him numerous
Kratos,
times.
I agree.
Yeah,
it's like, sure, Kratos, I agree with you. Yeah, you go, man. That's perfectly fine. Yeah, yo, the best meta. Let's go. But then I don't know.
And the worst thing is that he's also got John to agree with his horrible scaling, right? It's like, man, if you actually want to discuss this civilly, right, with respect of each other, we can voice chat at any time, and I'd love to have this discussion with you, right? But if you're just gonna rat and go behind my back, of course I'm gonna talk shit about you in the video, right? That's my way of confronting you, right? But if you actually want to have a proper discussion, right, that's perfectly fine. I'd love to do that instead. Because this shit right here is just ridiculous. Like, I wouldn't be taking the words of those two rats at all. Like, especially when they're fucking horrible at God of War scaling and won't even confront someone on how they think God of War scaling is. And like, they can't bring up the excuse, oh, it's not worth my time. That's such a fucking pussy response.
That sounds like something they would say. They'd be saying that shit.
It's like, you have the time to talk shit behind our backs and like try and debunk us, but you don't have time to fucking talk to us. You spent 3 hours responding to our video in a private call. Like, you have time, trust me.
The mid-Olympian team, especially considering Kratos was actually able to combat Atlas in the God of War Chains of Olympus game.
So we know that he was amped by Zeus's gauntlet there in that instance because Zeus used that gauntlet back during the war to beat Titans. So if he needed that weapon and then ditched it for the Blade of Olympus, we know that it's just it just has fundamental properties that just make it strong. Because Kratos wouldn't have been able to do that without that.
Using the Gauntlet of Zeus.
And he acknowledges
Kratos
that as well.
was actually able to pretty much chain and nail Atlas to hold up the world, a greater penance.
Weakened Atlas, by the way, mind you, with only like a portion of his magic left.
Than Zeus himself almost placed on the Titans. But this is a much weaker Kratos, of course, as well. So you kind of get this sense that Kratos is like kind of an animal. And I don't want to sit here and try and quantify how much effort he's putting into each fight, because I am doing that to a minor degree. It just should be noted that
at least he agrees that it's like unquantifiable in some instances, right? Unlike Edgar.
They are combating a much stronger Kratos here. Especially if you go off the fight, it does seem to be a very back and forth confrontation. That's the way I'll put it. Essentially, the sisters are combating a much stronger Kratos when a much... The
funny thing with this as well, Kenny, is the fact that they're traveling back in time, and the Sisters of Fate don't even try... Like, Atropos doesn't even try to... Like, if she's so much stronger, right, than all of these other characters, she could have just waltzed up to Ares and Kratos and helped Ares beat Kratos in the past, and, you know, Kratos probably could have done nothing. Instead, she thinks it's more valuable to destroy this sword. So, that should be telling as well.
That tells you, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, they're not thinking, hey, let's go back into the past and force Kratos to watch us beat him. Instead, we're going to go destroy this sword real quick.
Weaker Kratos is combating an individual capable of already being able to contend with other Olympians, which is more so just a testament to how powerful Kratos is in general. Ares. Now, Ares is an extremely oppressive character in the God of War mythos, despite being the
yeah, we do just know he's like the 4th mightiest Olympian. He is pretty strong.
Final boss in God of War 1. Right off the bat, we can get a sense that Ares is among the higher echelon of Olympians from the God of War multiplayer when he appears as one of the mightiest gods of Olympus.
Spitting.
Behold, the mightiest gods of Olympus. Choose wisely, for the path you take will be the first important step in your quest.
Next to Hades, Poseidon, and Zeus. We also know the God of War Ascension multiplayer was outright stated to be in line with the actual God of War lore,
Yeah,
including their
spitting.
weapons. Along with this, we know that
So
Kratos
far,
needed
yeah.
Pandora's box to even combat Ares on a somewhat even playing field. And even then, it could be argued he'd have lost that encounter if not for the gods assisting him. With Ares even go.
The gods didn't even really assist him, did they? Outside of like teleporting him there, right? Because they didn't actually place the sword there, did they? It's more so like, oh my god, in this instance, there's something there to help me, right? So,
Yeah.
Goading Zeus to use his legendary thunderbolt that so many other gods feared, and him showing great confidence in areas many gods do not. Ares was contending with a Kratos that was previously established to being able to somewhat combat the Titans. It should be
so also the interesting thing here is that despite being empowered by Hope in this instance to give him this giant form, it's obviously not the same amount of hope that he's using at the end of God of War 3, right? Because he doesn't mention this in the video. I just find it like interesting is that even when using hope to empower him, there's like different levels of the power that it can provide, right? Which I find to be pretty interesting, and like it probably depends on how hopeful Kratos is, right?
no surprise that Ares' lore and feats be this high on the totem pole, requiring Kratos to essentially absorb the power of a god to even combat him, which, I mean, is really impressive as we've seen Kratos run through many, many gods. Now we're moving on to the high Olympian tier. Now, you might be asking why Ares isn't in this tier. And
No
besides the
Norse
obvious
god
lack
should
of
be
feats
here,
compared to
but of course, we
The
know
Norse
what's
god
going
should be like around Atropos, if I'm being honest.
Poseidon and Hades.
Being
We actually
truthful,
do
yeah.
know that the big three in God of War do reign supreme compared to the rest of the gods of Olympus in terms of strength. It can also be argued that although Ares is one of the mightiest gods of Olympus via God of War Ascension, that would be more so in relativity to everybody else. It doesn't inherently mean he's more comparable to the big three. An analogy that can
Yeah,
be
that's
used to
fair.
explain this would be that you have 4 runners said to be the fastest in the class, but the top 3 runners are way faster than the 4th. The 4th just happens to be faster than everybody else. That's Ares. He's just far superior to everybody else. But the big 3, which were previously stated.
Yeah, because this whole instance right here probably would have been Zeus, Poseidon, Hades, Helios, Ares, and Athena. That probably would have been
Athena,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Stated to be at the top of the totem pole happen to be a peg above Ares.
You challenge me, mortal? A god of Olympus?
Now, Poseidon and Hades are shown to be extremely powerful in the God of War universe, being shown far weaker and earlier in their lives to be able to take on Kronos and Atlas very confidently, which is just a small display of their strength.
I don't feel like only showing the end of the war, because that was the end of the war when Zeus had the blade. We know that their war lasted for 1,000 years, which means I don't personally believe they're confident in taking them on if they've been fighting for thousands of years, well, 1,000 years, right? I feel like that's a little bit dishonest, but you know, it's like they're obviously relative to the point in the past that they just can't beat each other instantly, right?
We do know both of these combatants are extremely
Oh, did you want to say something, Kenny?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
extremely comparable, especially when we look at the fact that they are both very confident when the prospect of fighting each other came about. So
Yeah, so I personally, like, he thinks that they're, like, interchangeable. I personally think Poseidon is above Hades, but, you know, it's fine if you think they're interchangeable, whatever.
it's actually a little more subjective who would take the lead at this point, as they display very similar lore and are very comparable in that lore. I would make the assertion that Hades would be above Poseidon, if not for the fact they actually get stronger from each soul he absorbs. And we actually know he absorbed the souls of titans like Atlas, along with his claws being an extremely hacks ability. In all honesty, compared to Poseidon, who uses, water or, the rage of Poseidon, perhaps you could make the argument the location could make the difference here for Poseidon. But I personally find Hades' hacks far more impressive.
I don't feel Hades' hacks will do anything to Poseidon if they're relative. So,
Yes, and also the soul argument. Do you like? Does he really think that absorbing some mortal souls will make him strong enough to overpower his brother? Like,
yeah, no.
even let's be honest, even if it was like all the humans in the world, like, what does that even amount to?
Yeah, all the humans in the world wouldn't even reach like Kratos when he had no abilities at all.
We actually kind of made a calc about this like the last time.
Yeah, I
Like,
remember.
it would be around like I don't know. It was stated to be like, I don't know, town level or something like that. Do you think like a town level amp will make a difference between them? I don't know.
Yeah,
Kind of weird. to say.
yeah.
Decided. But these two are very, very, very close in strength. So if you want to put one over the other, that's completely fine, as it's more subjective. It also should be noted that Poseidon, as time progresses, would also logically get stronger. We just know that, for example, if Poseidon and Hades progressed at the same rate, Hades would...
I feel like Poseidon did better against Kratos than what Hades did, because Hades was having chunks of his body ripped off him, whereas like Kratos kind of needed the help. Because Kratos still would have won against Poseidon. Like, let's just assume they're on a flat ground surface. Poseidon's there. And Kratos doesn't have Gaia. Obviously, Kratos is still going to win because he has the Blade of Olympus and whatnot, but I feel it would have been far more difficult without Gaia, because he was actually using Gaia to get onto Poseidon and, like, attack him at close range and whatnot. So, I feel that he did a lot better. Poseidon did a lot better against Kratos and Gaia than what Hades did against Kratos alone.
Yeah, but also something they could be trying to argue right now is that Kratos gets stronger over time. So Hades is fighting a stronger Kratos, which is something they're probably going to try to say.
Yeah,
if we were to confront them about this.
Yeah,
which is not true at all.
Even if he is getting stronger, the issue is that we can't quantify. It could literally be a 0.1 times multiplier, right, over the course of like 1 minute, right? It's like no. Does anything actually even indicate that? Wait a minute. Does anything actually even indicate that Kratos gets stronger over time, or is it just gods?
Okay. This is the argument that they use. They use Deimos, right? They say Deimos was sitting like capturing the dimension of in the realm of death, and he got strong enough to fight Thanatos along with Kratos over time. So they're just assuming that Kratos would like be doing the exact same thing, and he would get like that strong, which is retarded because it's just him growing to an adult and becoming stronger.
I mean,
you can just say that
stronger, yeah.
Yeah, you can just say that Deimos just had like greater potential than Kratos, and that's why he grew to that level. It doesn't have to be like inherently like him just growing stronger over time just because because he's a god or something.
The issue is as well is that we know that like Deimos was let down because he has very clear, like when he has different armor on, right? He has like a gauntlet on his right arm, so it's more than likely that Thanatos put him down, tortured him, and like made him fight against him, right? So like the issue is that why would Thanatos change Deimos's nappies, right, and shit, and give him better armor and a gauntlet and better equipment if he's just going to be chained up for eternity? You know what I mean? That doesn't make much sense. So he was very clearly let down, and like Thanatos more than likely had him fighting like goons and shit. So, yeah, there's nothing to actually suggest that, because Kratos is only half god, so let's state that the hybrid with the human, right, is like less than the potential of what a god has, which is just a fucking titan. Gods are just titans, okay? They're not a hybrid. They're just titans, right? Same as the titans. Titans are just primordials, okay? So
pretty much.
Like even if we state that Kratos does get amped, it would be half at what the gods would be obtaining over time. So even then, his progression, if he is getting stronger, is half of what the gods would be, since he's only half god. So, and there would be nothing to assume that the hybrid would make that ability greater.
From each soul he absorbs, which you do know to be the case from his boss fight in God of War 3. Simply put, these two are very interchangeable, very, very powerful, eclipsing most of the other gods, if not all of them. Well, not all of them, because you know who's going to be above them. But simply put, they are at the top. They are the top dogs. That's pretty much all I can say on that. Now, Zeus is very, very powerful, like, to no one's surprise. And it really shouldn't surprise anybody that have Zeus this high on the list. Now, Zeus claims the #1 spot on the Olympian hierarchy. Now, this is pretty self-explanatory, especially when we consider Zeus was powerful enough to combat Kratos very evenly without the power of hope, or, you know, Zeus's fear avatar being involved. His thunderbolt is also something every Olympian fears, including his two brothers, Hades and Poseidon, who also submit to Zeus when the prospect of battling or angering him comes into play. Zeus is so powerful, in fact, that while wielding the Blade of Olympus, he thought he could actually one-shot Hades with 0 difficulty. And Zeus wielding the Blade of Olympus is no small feat, as even one slash from the Blade of Olympus ended the Great War, which went on for hundreds of years. So, depending on who wields the Blade of Olympus is an astronomical growth in power. And this same Zeus, right, who's relative enough to Kratos, gets stabbed by Kratos using the same Blade of Olympus. Actually, arguably a much stronger Blade of Olympus because it absorbs the god power.
I always want to point out as well that, like, the battle between Zeus and Kratos was far more relative than people hope to, like, explain, right? Or even try to acknowledge. It's like, in this instance right here, Zeus is very clearly capable of taking over and overpowering Kratos and stealing the Blade of Olympus from him, right? Yeah. So it's like they're more relative than what they seemingly are and what people think. Because Kratos wasn't just stomping Zeus throughout this entire fight. I feel it was more relative than what characters would think. Or what people would think.
If anything, Kratos was just like slowly pushing him. He was beating him down, okay? But they were actually having a fight. It wasn't like Kratos was just grabbing his head and just pummeling him through the ground, and he wasn't getting any sort of resistance, right? They were actually having a fight.
Like at the very beginning of the first phase, you know how at the very beginning Zeus drags him up into the air and they both hit each other apart into the two columns? They both release the same amount of blood upon contact as well. So like Zeus is capable of pushing Kratos with enough force to make him like bleed the same amount that he is with what Kratos is pushing him against with, right? And the force that Kratos is applying. So
actually arguably a much stronger Blade of Olympus because it absorbs the god power from Athena and Zeus himself in the boss fight. So he actually gets stabbed by a arguably stronger Blade of Olympus, in which case, you know, it should be pretty clear that he's just a notch above a lot of characters in the God of War universe, as he's seen just taking it up the to be honest. So moving on from there, defeating Gaia in God of War 3, almost one-shotting her and showing complete dominance over the Greek pantheon in terms of strength. Even without the Blade of Olympus, Zeus is just an absolute animal. His feats speak for themselves. He's able to combat a Kratos far stronger than the one that defeated all the other gods, so that shouldn't be too questionable. His Thunderbolt has an extremely powerful lore, very powerful lore. He is the strongest on Olympus, eclipsing the Greek pantheon and Titans completely. And this makes sense, obviously, as the Zeus that did fight the Titans was a much younger and weaker Zeus, as gods get much stronger over time.
Sure.
Throw whatever you have at me. I'll keep coming.
Here we go. Who do you think told him of this scaling? Do you think it was Egard? Do you think it was Carnifex? Who do you think it was that gave him this idea?
I would bet it on that card, to be honest. I have to say it probably was. It had to have been him.
Yeah. Anyway, I've already debunked this in my other video, but if he gives the same arguments, I'll just respond to them again.
That old body
with my input.
But before I end this, I want you to know one thing. I can't feel any of this.
Now you might be questioning why I have the Norse pantheon above the Greek pantheon. Allow me to explain. I touched on this slightly in my Baldur vs. Zeus video, but I will go more in depth with it here. Essentially, Baldur was stated by Kratos to have powers essentially surpassing anything Kratos has fought before.
So I will respond to this again, and then you give your input. Okay, Kenny?
Yes.
So the thing that he's ignoring is right after Kratos acknowledges that he is surprised that a mortal is capable of tanking the monolith being crushed onto him. So in his mind, he's thinking of characters who are mortal that scale to him. And Baldur is obviously above characters like Perseus and Theseus, right? So the issue is that I'll give an analogy. If I'm fighting a if I'm playing against a soccer player, right, and I am a basketball player, and this dude kicks the ball, and I go, wow, no basketball player would have been capable of kicking the ball like that. Am I comparing that soccer player to all other soccer players? Or am I saying, no, he's probably a better kicker than every basketball player I've gone up against, right? Or just basketball players in general. So he is comparing his strength to every other mortal and not any other god. And one more thing as well is that there is promotional material for the game, right? That Kratos needs to reawaken his dormant powers that have been rusted over the course of 115 years. We know it's not referencing hope because he only has a small portion left, right? So it's referencing strength alongside the context of him being rusty in the games and progressively getting stronger throughout the games. We can say that he needs to reawaken the strength that he once had. He doesn't have Hades' soul anymore. He doesn't have Kronos' amp anymore, which amps his stats. He doesn't have Poseidon's rage. He doesn't have Nemean Cestus. He doesn't have any other amps that he received in the previous games, right? So the most we can say for his dormant power would be all of that without those amps. And that would be around God of War 1 to God of War 2 Kratos level. So no, he is not stronger than any other gods. And any time someone like Egard or Carnifex tries to debunk this, they appeal to absurdity, or they bring up some other dumb fuck statements like the Black Breath, where Kratos is clearly referencing to the fucking stench of it, right? With how potent the stench is. And even if you wanted to say that the Black Breath is stronger than any other magical ability, it's circumstantial with what can defeat it, and Kratos can't overpower it without the light of Alfheim. So it's possible that Odin created this magical attack thinking that nothing could beat it unless they got the light of Alfheim, which is an extremely difficult task to undergo. Nothing else in this series suggests that Kratos is stronger at all. It suggests he's weaker. Anyway, you go, Kenny.
Yeah, I also want to point out this statement right here is literally like meaningless. It holds no weight regardless of what you say. Why? Because let's think about this real quick. So we know that this Kratos is weaker than any other like iteration of Kratos. Maybe he cats at God of War 1 or God of War 2 level. Maybe.
Yeah.
So then this Kratos is obviously weaker. He's rusty. He doesn't have any of the powers that he used to have. And the statement only says the power this man controlled seemed far greater than anything Kratos had encountered in his past life. Seem just mean to give the impression or sensation of. So you can just say that Kratos, by being weaker, it just means that Baldur is giving him the impression of being stronger than anything he has faced before because he's struggling more against him because he's way weaker now. So he's way weaker. It's not a statement from certainty, right? He's not certain about it. He just said it seemed that he was stronger. So this is just unquantifiable at best because it's a statement from a weaker Kratos, right?
He hasn't given it proper thought. He's just like ballparking, right? He's not sure. So,
Pretty much.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, that's pretty much like this statement is just garbage. You cannot use it for it.
I know, right? And again, you can't even quantify how much stronger he is, right? Like, if you want to say far greater, it's like, what does far greater even mean? Is he like 2 times their strength? Is he 1.5 times their strength? 1.2 times? Like, you can't even quantify it, so.
Which, in fairness, is most likely in reference to his invulnerability. The issue is Baldur is also quoted to have raw strength superior to Kratos throughout their fight, pressuring
Threw the man's arms inside, unleashed a flurry of the Doodoo. The stranger, however, recovered quickly, deflecting Kratos' blows and using his superior strength to seize Kratos. Yeah, that just means that at that point, Baldur had superior strength than what Kratos had. So.
before, which in fairness is most likely in reference to his invulnerability. The issue is Baldur is also quoted to have raw strength superior to Kratos throughout their fight, pressuring Kratos many, many times.
So he's stronger than like a God of War 1 Kratos, nice.
Baldur goes as
That's
far as to
rusty,
making him
by the
such an
way.
impression on
Yeah.
Kratos that Kratos believes he is simply a monster, going as far as to
It was now inevitable, but the man could not be killed. He would keep coming until he succeeded in destroying one or both of them. Kratos ransacked his memory, desperate to unearth some skill, some trick, some nuance of being a god that might allow him to defeat this monster in human form. Interesting enough, he doesn't have any of the skills or any of the tricks that he would have had in previous games because he doesn't have the amps, he doesn't have the magic, and he doesn't have the equipment. So him ransacking his memory would be extremely limited to when he's fighting characters with his own strength, which is like Spartan Kratos. He'd probably be looking back at when he was a Spartan general and going, what possible tactic could I use to beat him?
rack his brain as to some god ability of his that could actually defeat Baldur.
He doesn't have any god abilities, except for his rage.
The same guy with no hesitation scaled Mount Olympus is trying to figure out a way to defeat Baldur. Now I know what you're going to say next too. Kratos is rusty and suppressing himself due to Atreus.
Mhm.
My point
Spitting!
is Kratos being rusty.
Pretty
we
much,
actually do
yeah.
have confirmation from Cory Barlog himself.
This statement's bullshit and is extremely vague. Because he says, he says the Olympus era, younger self. It's like, Cory is a fucking idiot if he thinks that Baldur is stronger, or mind me, that Kratos is stronger than his Hope variant. He is a fucking idiot if he thinks that. He is absolutely brain dead. I'll tell you that about Cory right now.
That old Kratos is actually superior to his Olympus era counterpart. This is most likely referring to end of God of War Kratos without the power of hope, which makes sense since A, gods get stronger over.
So, if Cory Barlog is limiting characters or versions of Kratos in his mind, and he's limiting Hope Kratos, we could state that he could also just be limiting it and saying that it's Kratos without any of his previous abilities.
Time, but B, Kratos would still have a sliver of that power, so we know Kratos is confidently above his prime counterpart.
No.
That rusty part is kind of out of the way.
No.
What about Atreus?
Absolutely no.
Absolutely not.
Now the statements Kratos makes on Baldur, it shouldn't really be relevant if Atreus is there or not because he is making a note of his opponent's strength. The only argument I could see for arguing like Atreus being there is that Kratos isn't able to like destroy the field around him and has to redirect the fight. It would simply be his assessment of Baldur. Atreus actually isn't present in the fight against Baldur either until the end of the game, in which Atreus is actually noted to be getting exponentially stronger.
Oh shit, he got this argument. He got this argument from Egard, dude. I saw this scan in John's server where he goes, he's surging with strength. Oh my god.
I've been telling you.
Yeah, bro, Egard needs to stop scaling God of War.
So Atreus actually grew from his learning about.
He thinks that Draugr are stronger than Hope Kratos. Okay, that's what this idiot thinks.
Identity. Also, that would answer the question as well, as Atreus actually does get astronomically stronger throughout the game.
He does not get astronomically stronger. That's bullshit.
It's almost like he gets over a mental barrier, which a lot of people have. In real life, that's a big thing. The mental state of an individual can greatly affect their physical limitations and prowess, I guess you could.
Yeah, so in that moment, it could just be the fact that he wants to impress Kratos and actually join him in doing something, and he's just surging with like a desire to be better, rather than actually getting stronger. Because it says only in that moment he is surging with strength in his arms, right? It's not stating that he maintained that or anything else. It's just a heat of the moment where he's capable of like exerting more force to do something.
It's kind of like adrenaline.
Yeah,
in a sort of way.
it's like an adrenaline boost. It's like, do we say, because there was like a recent study done, and Seth even uses it in one of his videos, that like the typical like standard for a human strength is like war level, right? If we're considering like the average human, but there are people and humans who are capable of like lifting cars in the heat of the moment and like exerting enough force and like are being pumped with so much adrenaline that they can literally lift cars without any fucking help. So no, it's one of those moments. He is not getting stronger. He couldn't believe the strength he had surging in his arms as he's in the heat of the moment. That's ridiculous.
People have. And
Like they're taking these statements and like exaggerating them to their absolute maximum to get this notion that Draugr are superior to fucking fear Zeus.
in real life, that's a
Yeah,
big
just
thing.
to suit the
The
narrative.
mental state of an individual can greatly affect their physical limits.
Like they fucking claim that I'm like lowballing shit to suit my narrative when they're wanking shit to suit their narrative. It's ridiculous.
Patience and prowess, I guess you could say. But with all this evidence, whether you look at Kratos being stronger than his actual quote-unquote prime in Greek, or Kratos' own assessment of Baldur's power, it should be pretty clear that the Norse pantheon of warriors is a notch above the Greek pantheon of rulers.
Also, it makes absolutely no narrative sense for like a sub god like Baldur, right? Like a mid god to be stronger than the top tier god of the Greek pantheon, since like numerous statements by directors like Bruno, for example, have stated that they like should be like when referencing Odin and Zeus, they state that they're both king of the gods, so they should be roughly relative, right? It makes no sense for one pantheon to be at like, especially if, because I hate the Fallen God comic so much, but if it's as simple as walking across a fucking dimensional barrier, right, and entering another pantheon, we know that Odin is Odin desires to control every land in every realm in every world, as verbatim stated by Mimir, right? So if he was so much stronger or so much greater than Zeus or fucking Thoth in Egypt or Ares or anyone else in any other pantheon, he would just walk to their pantheon and overpower them and take control of their universe, right? But he
It
doesn't
makes no
do that.
sense.
Yeah.
And even more if you consider that these people really think that a Draugr would be like Hope Kratos. If they think that a Draugr would be like Hope Kratos, what do they think about Odin? Like, why is Odin not walking to the Greek pantheon and just one tapping immediately with a stare? I don't know.
Yeah, he would like
It's
his
super weird.
spiritual pressure should literally crush them just being in their presence, right? So it makes so not only does it not make any scaling sense, it doesn't even make narrative sense either. It's so fucking dumb.
My vengeance ends now.
Kratos, the ghost of Sparta, the fist of Ares, the slave of Olympus, the god of war, Kratos. The man who single-handedly dismantled the Greek pantheon, haunted by his past, but now looking forward to his future. No one is surprised by his placement here. We have Kratos growing.
I hope you're talking about
always.
God of War
I'm
3
certain he's
Kratos.
actually going to grow far more in God of War Ragnarok, so it's safe to say we haven't seen his true limits and how far his power.
We know, so like, there's probably nothing wrong with God of War Ragnarok Kratos being higher than like, you know, Ares and shit, because we know that he's been training for numerous years. He's been training for 3 years straight. So like, Kratos could have just gotten stronger through some magical means or some random shit, right? But you still need to take into context that he doesn't have any of his previous amps or magic. So
power really has gone. And I didn't want to go through and put his various forms at certain points on this list.
So it's just Kratos as a whole? Okay.
It would just be ultra tedious and nobody really would want to see that. So we have Kratos at the top, which really shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, considering how we fared far better against a far more motivated Baldur, who actually found euphoric pleasure in fighting Kratos in their finale. So you can actually make the argument he's trying much harder, I suppose.
That's what God of War 3 Kratos would do to God of War 4 Kratos.
Kratos is really getting stronger always, which is why he's at the top. I don't really think
he's never getting stronger on his own. That's a lie. That's never happened.
Needs to be much of a discussion, you know, his astronomical growth throughout the games. You could still...
Every single time he grows is because of some amp that he gets from another person.
The notion, actually, that Baldur is above Kratos at this point, since it did somewhat require Atreus to support Baldur in their final fight, but also you could imply Kratos isn't trying to kill Baldur due to Freya's sake, so it could be either or. We don't really know.
Okay, so this is like a minor point, but we know he is trying to kill Baldur because when he gets him on the ground, he's choking him with the intent to murder him, right? He's like impaling him with the blades of chaos in hope to murder him.
It isn't after. It isn't after. It isn't until after Atreus tells him to, yo, stop. He's beaten. We don't have to do this. Like, just let him go at this point.
Yeah,
that he actually makes up his mind and just says, like, yeah, let me leave him.
Yeah.
If you want to hold Baldur over Kratos, that's still a fine notion to have. I'm just putting Kratos over Baldur due to my own personal opinion. But that is going to be the list. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed the video, please make sure to like. I would really appreciate it. I actually had to put some down cash to get those novels, but you know, it is what it is. I love what I do. And definitely make sure to subscribe if you're new here. I would appreciate it. I'm always doing stuff like this, moving towards bigger and more interesting projects. So definitely let me know. I would appreciate the support. I appreciate you watching. I really enjoyed making this video. Enough with that sob shit. Man, you guys have a good one. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.
All right. So that's the end of that.
That was that.
All right. So, conclusions. Yeah. So now we'll get on to what we had in terms of tier lists. So we included 2 versions of Kratos, unlike him. We just included 2018 and God of War 3. So what his tier list was 2018 Kratos, Baldur, Zeus, Hades/Poseidon, Ares, Lachesis, Atropos, Kronos, Atlas, Helios, Athena, Hermes, Gaia, and then the Primordials, right? What we have is Kratos, Zeus, Poseidon, probably above Hades, Atlas, Kronos, Uranus, then Ares, Gaia, Helios, Hyperion, Nyx, Athena, Ceto, Rhea, Chaos, Atropos, Lachesis, and then we got 2018 Kratos, Baldur, then Hermes. If you want to see the tier list up on screen, which I can get up real quick if you want it. Yeah, this is our tier list. Okay, if you actually want to see the tier list on screen, this is what we have. So, we have updated it a lot since the actual tier list video. We reread the novels, we went through the novels, we took into consideration the novels, some director statements, the games. We basically reevaluated our opinions on God of War. And this is what we've come to.
Wait, are you trying to show the tier list on screen? It's not showing on the stream. Okay, now it is.
Yeah, there you go. Can you see it?
Yes.
Because I realized I stopped streaming screens in Discord. Sorry, but yeah, if you
that is a tier list, right?
Yeah, this is our tier list. So
yep.
Yeah. So these are like the comic characters, right? Then we got Ascension. You know, we got these characters. Yeah. If anyone has any questions, you can ask in the comments. There's only 7 people, but you know, we could still explain if anyone has any questions. Other than that, this is our tier list. Now, this is what I was saying with Hyperion, is that he could be argued to be around this level. If you think that he has the exact same power as Helios and he can manipulate that power, same as what Helios can, he would be around here. This is God of War 2 base Kratos. Then we got the Sisters of Fate, you know, these guys right here. In reference to Ragnarok, Odin will probably be an A+ next to Zeus. Thor will probably be around B+ or A-, probably. And then, you know, other characters will kind of just scale and whatnot. We'll probably update and take God of War 4 Kratos off and just have Ragnarok Kratos, since he's probably going to be much stronger. And he'll probably be around B+ to A-, depending on the scaling.
Yes.
So yeah. This is Prime Oceanus, by the way, over here. And these are like the prime versions of the Titans as well, because obviously their weakened versions would be much lower, like in the current time. But yeah. Yeah, Fallen God Kratos is right here.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Greek pantheon is, and the Nordic pantheon is just not competing with the Olympians as of now, with what they have shown. That's why they're so low. Right?
And it can obviously change if we get more statements in Ragnarok as well.
Yes.
By the way,
Odin
Edgar...
probably...
Yeah, what's up?
No, I was just going to say, Odin will probably have something nice, obviously.
I feel Odin is going to be magically, like, hacked the fuck out and going to have a lot of power.
And he's being hyped up to be like a... that it will be more interesting to see him fight Zeus than Zeus against, like, Thor or anybody else. So.
Yeah. By the way, this burnt dude is Perithous, or whatever his name is. He was considered... So, when thinking of the Hydra in God of War 1, Athena and Poseidon think of people who could potentially defeat it. They think Perseus, Hercules, Perithous, pardon me, and Theseus. They say Theseus is too old, so that shouldn't be a contender. They say that Perithous is trapped in Hades, therefore he shouldn't be a contender. And Perseus is not trustable, like he's not trustworthy, right? So therefore he isn't. So we can determine that these two are stronger, but due to the circumstances of their mental states and, you know, literally being trapped in hell and not wanting to go against Hades' wishes, they could be interchangeable between each other because he has the bow of Apollo. But yeah, as a bare minimum, they should be above the Hydra right here. And by the way, Egard thinks that this Hippo and this Kratos are stronger than Hope Kratos, by the way. So
he's just he thinks that Fallen God Kratos is just like stronger than Hope Kratos and everything. Like, make that make sense to me, please. Just make that make sense to me. How do you think that a Kratos that just lost all of his powers, lost all of his ants, lost hope, the majority of hope, and then he's weakened from an injury that he got from the Blade of Olympus, then he's somehow, by getting some random ant from just sitting his ass on the sand, now he's somehow stronger than anything he has.
He's also exhausted as well, mind you. He hasn't been sleeping. He's exhausted. And there are studies showing that to when someone is exhausted, they aren't capable of exerting all of their physical force due to being tired and their mental state not being in the right state to actually exert specific amounts of force. So he wouldn't even be at his best of what his strength would be within Fallen God. By the way, this person right here is what's her name? Aphrodite. In the God of War 1 novel, she states that she's capable of eviscerating God of War 1 Kratos. So,
if she wanted to, from a distance, not even being present.
Yeah, this is after he receives Poseidon's rage as well. So, you know, he'd be amped by that too. And she could just one-tap him. So, she's roughly around here, probably a little bit higher. Yeah. Do you think we should explain anything else with the tier list that may look weird? Oh, Deimos. Yeah, Deimos. Deimos is probably a little bit weird for some people. So he basically, he's basically needed in the fight against Thanatos because there are scenes where, Kratos is being choked out by Thanatos and can't break his grip, and he needs Deimos to actually interfere. And Deimos is obviously capable of damaging Thanatos. And one change that we hadn't made is that the last Spartan would be around this tier as well.
And the Colossus of Rhodes, I think we should probably explain that one.
Yeah, so
Colossus.
Despite having so Kratos only had a portion of his God of War power left. And the Colossus of Rhodes was he had reached the tipping point of having absorbed Kratos' godly energy. So let's say he had 80% and Kratos had 20% left. Kratos with 20% of his godly energy was still capable of damaging and fucking up the Colossus. So the Colossus could actually be a little bit lower. And then Kratos just absolutely decimated it when he had the Blade of Olympus. So the Colossus of Rhodes could probably even go lower. but we're just being like we're being courteous and saying that he does just have Kratos' strength. So he could be like maybe in B plus, like above Ares, or he could be there. It doesn't matter. Did you want to explain anything about it, like your thoughts on it?
Yeah, you could try to maybe say to amp him up a little bit higher that he tanked blows from the Blade of Olympus, but of course he was getting decimated by it. It isn't that he actually like blatantly scales to its AT entirely because he was getting fucked by it, but that wouldn't really get him any higher than that because the Blade of Olympus just has the remaining of Kratos' powers in it, basically. His godly powers in it, and that's what he's using to fuck him up. And we already know that Kratos' godly powers, he's already able to contend with the Colossus, even without the blade. So that's
And like 20% of his power,
happened.
if you're being generous.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, obviously, we were just explaining, Uranus is very clearly above Thanatos if Thanatos cucked down to him, or didn't even try to contend with him in the war. Nyx obviously cucked down to it's like, it's very, very clear that every primordial just cucked down to him and accepted him as their ruler, right? Similar to how everyone cucks down to Zeus and they see him as their ruler, right? So it's very weird to not have him at least in the same tier as Kronos. It's very weird because we know Kronos is weaker in God of War 3. Like, it's just very blatant. Like what Kenny said through the stream, he doesn't have his magic anymore. Atlas doesn't even have his remaining magic anymore. They've been like strained to walk through deserts and hold up the world. They haven't had room to grow stronger, and there's nothing to suggest that they actually are stronger than their previous selves. So Prime Kronos, especially if like Atlas was going to fatally injure Hades with like his just by throwing rocks at him, they should just be roughly in the same tier.
So if you see a weaker Kratos being able to basically almost murder Kratos or have him admit that he died or that he could have died in that scene, this is a weaker Atlas. This is a weaker Kronos, mind you. So that means that Prime Kronos nobody should have any problems like having him around that tier. And Atlas, of course, scales above him, slightly above him on physical strength.
Yeah.
So
and it's weird how Kratos doesn't even use the Blade of Olympus to its fullest extent. Like, he doesn't BFR anyone. He doesn't do that massive AoE attack that Zeus did at the beginning of God of War 2. He kind of just stabs people with it. So,
I think it's a style thing. I think he just likes like overpowering them like without access more so than not. Like, he likes to go raw on them, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty much.
Kind of poopy. Yeah, but this is our tier list. And again, keep in note that majority of the Titans here should be considered to be in their prime, because obviously they were chained up in Tartarus for thousands of years and have had no room to get stronger. So, yeah. I don't know, thinking Perseus isn't above Helios is just weird since he literally crushed him. It's very bizarre. And then, yeah. So
yeah, and Perseus was obviously in a compromising position, right? He was trying to hold himself onto the cliff of the mountain, right? And he was just trying to catch her. He was just trying to catch Helios with one hand. And the moment he gets a grip on him, he just one-shots him.
He cripples him.
Crushing him.
Yeah.
Immediately. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because
So,
yeah.
So it's weird to say he's not strong. Right?
Yeah. Hyperion should probably even be stronger than Helios, to be honest. But, yeah. We don't really have any tiering statements for the Titans outside of, Atlas and Kronos. That's actually the interesting thing is that they're not tiered by any of... at least me, personally, I haven't seen any director statements stating that, like, certain Titans are stronger than the others. Like, we don't have a very clear outline outside of Atlas, Kronos, and Gaia. So it's difficult to say how strong they are in relation to each other. But yeah,
do you think we should give our thoughts on the gods growing stronger over time and the problems with that as well?
Yeah, so I think the first big issue is that we don't know how much stronger they get.
Yeah,
Um,
unquantifiable much.
yeah, it's So the thing is that when it typically comes down to things that are unquantifiable, we don't use it because it isn't a determinable factor, right? It's not determinable, so we don't use something that's unquantifiable. All we know is that the gods are just stronger. They're strong enough to the point where they can just beat the Titans, whereas before they struggled immensely. So whether or not you think that's a 10 times boost, a 9 times boost, an 8 times boost, a 500 times boost in strength from thousands of years, we don't know. We can't definitively state. All we know for a fact is just that they're stronger. And every single Titan at that point as well is also at a disadvantage because they're trying to climb Mount Olympus. So
yeah. And by the way, for anybody that tries to say that the Greek gods don't scale to the Yggdrasil because Kratos quote unquote got stronger or anything like that, even if you try to say that he got stronger and he is stronger, which he's not, obviously, but even if you try to say that, you would have to prove that he got like infinitely stronger for them to not scale to the Yggdrasil, which is blatantly like very unlikely to be the case because we see when gods get stronger, when full gods get stronger, it's not an infinite level increase. Why would it be with Kratos? So yeah, aside of that, they would all scale to the tree, regardless.
yeah, exactly. Doesn't make sense. A lot of hypotheticals they're providing and a lot of assumptions. So yeah. Do we need to talk about anything else?
Not that I can think of right now. I think we're set.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just gonna turn back on that.
I'm gonna be leaving.
Okay. Well, that's it for the stream, guys. Like I said earlier, the dude by the name Carnifex and Egard, they're a bunch of liars and rats. They'll talk shit behind your back without actually confronting you. And when you try to confront them, they'll come up with excuses as to why they can't debate you. Or they will just blatantly duck. I hope ThunderGod actually wants to discuss things with me, because again, I can be civil in an actual formal discussion, right? But the reason as to why I'm insulting majority of the things he says is because he's willing to accept them from Egard, right? I will actually be respectful in a formal discussion. I'm willing to have that discussion with anyone who wants to have that discussion with me, even people in the comments, whoever watches this, I don't care. If you want to have a civil discussion, join the Discord in the description. We'll have that discussion. It'll be fun. It'll be interesting. I'd like to hear others' opinions. I'd like to hear why they think, God of War 4 Kratos is stronger when it's actually valid. And yeah. Egard, based off of like what I've seen through text messages, I know for a fact that you are reading this and you're probably going to be watching this later. If you actually have a disagreement, right, and you want to grow a set of balls, just confront me on it, man, and have that discussion with me, rather than being a little ratty pussy who disagrees with, or who agrees with me when we're calling, but then disagrees in text when I can't interact with you, because they're in private servers. This is all in a private server, right? So yeah, just send me a message, bro. Like, it's not that difficult. Like, are you scared I'm gonna give you PTSD or some shit? Like, I don't know. I'm not sure.
I'm willing. Yeah, I'm willing to talk. I'm willing to talk about this with you as well, Edgar, if you want. If you're not willing to talk to about this with Kratos, then you can come to me. I'm also willing to take the topic if you want to. You said you were going to debate me on it, but then you kind of just did. So I don't know what to do about you.
Yeah, it's like, there's nothing to be scared about, dude, or worried about. It's just a discussion. Like, surely you're capable of interacting with people and having, like, some form of social, like, acceptance and social awareness to actually have a conversation with someone, man. Like, it's so fucking bizarre to me that you need to, like, talk about it behind people's back. Now, whether or not you're scared, that's if you are or aren't, it doesn't matter. It's just talk to us, dude. Like, because it's frustrating. It's upsetting and disrespectful, right? So, if you actually have a genuine disagreement, because I want to find the truth. Okay, I want to discover the truth of the God of War scaling. I'm not doing it to be a debate goon. I'm not trying to be a debate goon or anything like that. I actually want to come to a definitive conclusion on scaling for God of War. I'm sure Kenny does as well, right? And I would hope that you would want to, and anyone else would want to as well. Like, this is just us trying to find the truth, dude. And it would be fun to discuss it with other people, because not many people ever want to discuss God of War, right? Or if they do, they're not that aware of scaling, and they're not that aware of lore, like in John's server, for example. John doesn't actually understand the scaling of the verse, and he requires help from people, right? So, like, just have a discussion with us, dude. It's not a problem.
We're just trying to help. We're just trying to help, if anything.
Yeah, we want
Don't
proper
be-
scaling for Kratos to get out there, right? That's why I helped Seth. I just wanted Kratos scaling to get out there so that people could see it and give their opinion on it, right? So, yeah, anything you would like to add to that note before we finish?
I think that was enough. That's nothing that needs to be said after that. We're just trying to help.
Yeah, we just want to reach some kind of constructive conclusion, man. Like, it's not. Don't be scared of us. What the hell?
I'm friendly. I'm the friendly guy. Come on.
Yeah, we can be friendly, and yeah. So that's it for the stream, guys. I don't have any plans for any videos soon, but if you guys wanna leave anything in the comments, that'd be fine. Someone provided a suggestion of a Zeus scaling video. I'll probably end up doing that next, but yeah. See you guys later. Thanks for joining me, Kenny. Thanks to Surfbone for doing the beautiful background and creating the thumbnail. Absolute pleasure. I appreciate it so much. If you don't want to add anything else, Kenny, I'm gonna end the stream. Okay, I'll see you guys later. Okay.
So yeah, thanks for having me here. Thanks a lot for sure. This is an honor to be here discussing these topics, because I really like God of War as well. So yeah, it's just been a great evening, man. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd have you anytime, man. So yeah, I'll see you guys.